This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So we've been talking a lot about this Browns defense, and for good reason, right? Through 3 weeks, they don't just look good. They don't just look pretty good. I mean, they've looked spectacular. We're talking about, we expect them almost. It's going to be a disappointment the first time a team has like 12 first downs in a game. Like, it really feels like that, right? Like, we're going to be like, I feel like the day that happens, people are going to be like, what's wrong with the defense? I thought it was this and that. And it's like, it's just a normal, really good game for a defense, but they've been so dominant. I mean, like 60% of the drives, 3 and outs that's a crazy stat. That is one of the most absurd stats I've ever seen for a defensive team through any period of time. And the Browns have done it through 3 weeks. And what makes us feel really confident about this defense isn't just the 3 weeks that they've shown here, but we've been saying this same thing. It looks improved since last month, right? 4 weeks ago, started preseason, started camp. And it's really just shown itself every week since then. So we feel really confident that this defense is who they say they are. Jake, if you have to put your analytical hat on, right? Your offensive coordinator hat on, and you're going up against the Cleveland Browns, what weaknesses are you trying to exploit to try to poke a hole in this defense?
Yeah, that's the good question right now is how are you attacking a team who's fitting the run aggressively? They're playing, I would say that they're playing aggressive, not reckless in terms of, there are some teams who I think pride themselves on an aggressiveness. Think the Brian Flores group, right? And then Josh Boyer last year in Miami. Now they have since hired a new DC, but a lot of cover zero types with it. That can be
Greg
aggressive,
Williams.
yet reckless at times. So I think they're playing aggressive in the right fashion, but there's no recklessness to what they're doing either. So if I'm looking at how do I attack them, I'm probably look at challenging perimeter run game in the sense that these guys are playing so fast that you can take advantage of some natural cutback stuff. Like, I think that, the team that strikes the most fear in me is San Francisco, because Kyle knows how to influence reading run keys like few others. I mean, think back to the wineback he ran against the Browns years ago there. I don't know, was it 19 or 20? That popped out the left side. I think it was Mostert, ironically, who now is having his revolution with Miami. But they broke that 80-yard run touchdown. They kind of did. They put Mac Wilson in a blender and had him reading front side, and he didn't hold the cutback lane. But that's what I would be doing. I would be trying to find some ways to get the Browns' run defense to be pursuing one direction and then coming back with an answer off of that opposite, if you can, right? Forming some natural cutback stuff. I think you could do some misdirection with them, some triple trap stuff, right? Some people call that like wham. There's some different names out there. Crunch. I would be doing things that encourage these aggressive defensive linemen upfield, and then have people putting a helmet in their ear hole and trying to create rushing lanes off of that. But again, I think that they have a chance, given their health, the way their physicality meshes up with setting the edge, to be a really special run defense. And, we talked about the Titans came into Cleveland and they had a 17-game stretch of really special run defense. And I think it gets lost in the sauce a little bit that their run defense was still really good in that game, but you're watching the Browns hold their offense to 94 yards. So you don't really talk about that. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be hard for teams to run on the Browns. I think they can maybe pop some shotgun run stuff where maybe I think you start seeing Quincy some of the Y9 stuff attacked with maybe a predictable pass situation where teams are trying to run it on them to take advantage of some of the run lanes that they present by doing some funky front stuff and some of their quick upfield stuff. So you got to kind of keep your eye on maybe some of those creative draw concepts, but I think they should be fine and run. Where I think that they could get a little dicey is if they play an offensive line, a really competent offensive line, and that team also has a schemer who can develop some play action off of it. Because right now they can pretty much, if you have a weak link, they're going to overwhelm it and going to put themselves in a position where the front can take care of the secondary. But think back to the Kenny Pickett touchdown to George Pickens, the only real significant play they've given up this year. They did a good job on that play of Kenny worked front side to backside, and he stood tall and he delivered the football, and you caught the Browns being too aggressive off of the run action, opening up a large window where they didn't punch out to curl flat quick enough. And then you have a chance to throw a seam shot. Now, it wasn't easy. Kenny had to sit in there, hold the pocket, deliver it. One of his best throws of the year, ironically. He took a hit. I think Dalvin Tomlinson was the one that hit him up under the chin. It was a pretty ugly one. I just think where I expect some teams to have some success is taking advantage of right now the Browns are playing with a ton of confidence. And sometimes that confidence can put you into being in places you shouldn't be because you think you know exactly what's going to come, right? You've been there for 3 weeks straight. You know exactly what's going to come. I think teams are going to try and take advantage of that aggressiveness. And I also think teams are going to start to take advantage of stretching the field vertically against a lot of cover 3, right? So the Browns play a significant amount of closed coverage right now. Cover 1, and man, like last year with Woods, they typically like to play a little bit more quarters. They have not even touched quarters at all this year. So they're a closed group now. They'll start out and open and then go to rotation to close late. So it's not the same picture pre to post, but there are going to be some teams that say, hey, we have the athletes. We think we can run up the seams on you. And they're going to really stress the guys who are going to be either middle hook defenders or those guys collisioning number 2 up the seams to prove to us that you can run with those with your eyes in the backfield, right? And I think the Ravens will challenge that. The Ravens have had, with Todd Monken now, they've had some success throwing the football up the seams because teams really just went against Lamar and how quickly Baltimore's trying to throw right now. They're trying to play 4 under coverages, so they're trying to sit in a lot of cover 3 to take away easy throws. You don't love to play man against Lamar because if you turn your back to Lamar, it's usually a death sentence. So, there's going to be a lot of cover 3, and can the Browns carry those verticals in cover 3 in a means to which makes those throws less appealing to Lamar, thus holding the football just a little bit longer. But yeah, that's it right now, man. I don't see I think the corners are too competent one-on-one to just be abused. Listen, there are certain talents that can always find a way, but they're playing with a lot of confidence. They're aggressive in coverage, not just in the blitz stuff here. So that stuff is all super encouraging, man. And it's going to take a very skilled offensive line and a very skilled schemer that can put some of their, guys that listen, it hasn't been perfect. If you watch the film, there have been moments where, if he would have just had a split second longer, he would have seen that and it could have been a play for the offense. There have been a few of those. It's not been perfect, but they have been able to get home with pressure or cover, right, for just long enough that the pressure gets home. It's really worked well in tandem. To your point, it's not always going to work out that way. So,
or sometimes it's like you get the quarterback's hand a little bit when you get them, and then that tips the ball a little bit, slow it down, and the secondary can come up with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't think they've played a great offensive line yet. The Bengals are a work in progress. Titans are a disaster. We obviously know Pittsburgh is not the most skilled group up front, too. The Baltimore group isn't great. They get Linderbaum, and I think Ronnie Stanley are back. We'll see how healthy those guys are, but it'll be probably one of the better ones they've played this year. So, you're always looking to find where do they get the next challenge. That'll be the challenge. But I also we'll dig into that on Baltimore at some point. I don't think they're as tough schematically as they used to be under Greg Roman from a unique perspective because they're doing a little bit more of the traditional stuff. But this is from a skill base, this is one of the better groups they'll have faced. So we'll see if there is apt to create pressure as they have been in recent games.
Yeah, you brought up the one thing about, hey, there have been plays, and I think that's where I think Myles Garrett's impact kind of gets forgotten about because people only notice it if he gets a sack and completely stops the play. There's so many plays where he just pops up and it just ruins whatever the quarterback's trying to do there, right? Where it's like, I'm going to stand in here, take this hit. Oh, it's Myles. Let me get out of here and throw it out of bounds or something like that. I think that happened a lot in week 1, especially. So, Myles being there, playing at the level that he's playing at right now, when you watch him, does this look like the best version of Myles that you've seen, or is this just the same guy utilized better?
A little bit. I mean, I think he's better than he's ever been. He's older than he's been, but he's very much in his athletic peak. I think he's got a great feel for when to use speed to power. I think he's got a great feel for when he can turn the corner or when he can just like, hey, I'm so much better than this guy. I can just run through his chest. Like, it's not going to matter. I heard JJ Watt talking about this when he was on, I think, McAfee's show, and he was talking about the Miles crossover from week 1. He's like, I've been in these games, man, where I've been in that zone he's in right there, where it doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to succeed. And that's where Miles is right now. He's so physically, speed and power, like the combination is so rare, the bend, like he's doing, I can't sit here, Quincy, and say he's like infinitely better than last year. I think he's on par. He's probably a pretty similar player to last year. I think he's playing a little bit better because I think he's got better teammates, man. And I think like the perfect example is the last sack that he had down near the end zone, where he forces Tannehill to step up. And traditionally, Tannehill is either able to throw that ball away or step up and throw the football somewhere, somehow. And he can't because Za'Darius is one inside, and that forces him to then step up again in the pocket to get past Za'Darius. And then Miles is continuing to run his arc that has already disrupted the quarterback. And there he is to clean up the sack. Like, he's getting and going to have more opportunity than ever because, teams eventually have to throw it downfield, right? Like, even the Pittsburgh game, if you would have had Pittsburgh sitting in that fourth quarter trying to throw downfield, Miles would have had multiple sacks. Like,
and that's where I think the offense helps out too, where it's like, hey, if you can score on offense and widen these leagues, because that's the one thing he's not had, right? The Browns have never been able to maintain these leads. And since that's the case, like, it puts these quarterbacks in a situation where they don't have to go and hold the ball to get these opportunities for sacks that other guys get. And I think that's a big thing for him too this year.
Well, go look at some of the best guys recently statistically. Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, TJ Watt. Look how many true pass sets they've had per year against how many Miles has had. That's exactly the point you're talking about. What I mean by true pass sets are third and longs, and those moments in the game where your team has the advantage in a nature that puts the opposing team into predictable pass situations. It is, it's jarring. He's not had that opportunity. You're talking 15 snaps or so a game, Quincy. If you're a 7-win team versus a team that's maybe win 10, 11, 12, where you get those opportunities because the game is iced away to just pin your ears back and be a disruptor. And he is obviously, as we know, has had quite a few of those through the first 3 weeks. And even in that Pittsburgh game, he was inches away from a couple sacks. And it was clear, man, Pittsburgh so few times held on to the ball. They were getting rid of that thing like it was a hot potato. And that's what he does. And now, again, you add in the layers of Za'Darius and Ogbo, like you cannot take a deep breath against this front, because even Maurice Hurst is playing good football. Jordan Elliott's been better than he's ever been. They're feeding off of each other. They're becoming a better group because they're watching the success the guy next to them is having, or maybe a guy like Jordan Elliott hasn't seen the work ethic of a guy like Dalvin Tomlinson before, some of these others, and gains perspective on what it takes to actually be successful in this NFL. So yeah, they're in a great spot. To your point, and something I've been trying to harp on, there are going to be some games on this schedule where they're not quite as good as you've grown accustomed to, but they're very talented, and the scheme and their belief in the scheme, which is so important, is all sort of meeting at the same crescendo to make this a deadly group. You're talking, like you said before the show here, a historic 3-game run here that is not fake, but they have I think one of their better challenges coming on Sunday.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because you've seen this defense play well against Lamar before, at least not this defense, this version of it, but these players match up well with some of what Lamar likes to do when he likes to break the pocket. I don't know how much of that was what Joe Woods was doing, or how much of that was just athletically. JOK is very athletic. He's one of those guys who can mirror Lamar a little bit and do some things there. So it's going to be interesting to see how they match up and how that changes from previous years. Because I think the last couple of years they've been able to do some things against Lamar the few times they've played him. Let's switch gears and talk about this run game. And I'm going to throw some projected stats out there, or not projected, but I'll say hypothetically, let's say this is what we get from the run game. Let's say Jerome Ford gets about 860 more yards.
Okay, so you probably putting him close to 1,000. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, are you saying
And then,
would that happen, or would I be happy with that outcome?
well, I'm saying I'm multiple players. So
Okay, got you.
so 860 with Jerome. Kareem gets about 500 to 600. Deshaun gets about 500. And then you get 200 from like etc. So like that could be anybody else, another running back, Elijah Moore. That do you think those are realistic targets for this running back room to hit this year?
Well, if Nick was the guy you thought could get to 15, 16 on his own, and you thought, maybe Jerome could come in for 3, 4, 5, like, yeah, I mean, I think philosophically the expectation is that they will change, Quincy, because of the injury to Nick. You would see an uptick in shotgun, you'd see an uptick in empty and some quick throw things that you would typically do if you don't have a stellar run game. But we haven't seen that yet. We saw about a 60-40 gun split, which is it's about what they've been, 25th in the league or so. It's not high. So the tilt of expectations shouldn't happen quite yet. Now we'll see, changing your offense around, losing such a vital piece as Nick in 5 days. It was a short week. That's really hard to do. The bye week is looming, and there's a chance they come out of the bye week doing some things differently. I would hope they would. And that's possible, but I don't think you should change your run game aspirations all too much. I think that there's obviously going to be a degradation of skill. You losing Nick is he's so good, and so I don't know if can they get to 1,600 between all those guys, right? Like you're saying, Kareem's at 4, Ford is 8 or 9, so that puts you close, and then you get some yardage from Watson, like you're talking about 200, 300, 400 yards. Yeah, I think your expectations should still be that. The thing that's tough is they've played, even Pittsburgh after Nick went down. Ironically, Nick had run in the first half for 10 carries, 65 yards. He was on his way to having a nice game, but after he left, outside of that Jerome Ford really fluky breakaway cutback run, there wasn't much in terms of a yards per carry thing. And then, as we know, Cincinnati, I think, has a pretty solid run defense. I think DJ Reader is a really nice player. BJ Hill's a nice complementary player there, and their edge guys are bigger, stronger, bulkier types, so they're not easy to run on. And they haven't, put it this way, and the Titans are historic what they've done in the run defense department for all those for that 17 game stretch that they're in. They haven't faced a weak run defense yet, is where I'm kind of getting to. And I think there will be times where they'll have some games where they can create some of the stuff we're accustomed to seeing, some of those chunkier runs. But for now, in Baltimore, again, with Justin Matabuke is a good run defense. I wouldn't alter it too much. I wouldn't say it needs to go off the deep end in terms of saying if you're going to, between Watson and all of them, they're going to run for about 2,000. I think you would hope that they could still find a way to get to that. The thing that's concerning right now is some of the run game blocking efficiency metrics are not very strong. They're among the 10 worst offensive lines right now in run game blocking data. There's Sports Info Solutions, ESPN does their run block win rate, and there's another source, I think True Media or something like that. PFF is probably what it's labeled. They're not hot there. They're really just a block away. As I've watched some of these games, I'm like two guys are taking one when they shouldn't, leaving one man untouched, right? There's a couple instances of that against Tennessee. So more of the story is, for sure, they're not far off. The run game is not all too far off, and I wouldn't categorize it as broken or something. I think they've got some nice run game outcomes in upcoming games, but I'm not sure it starts this weekend if I'm putting it that way. But there's still potential there to have a really good run game outcome. Obviously, you adjust it because Nick is Nick, but I think there's still something there.
Yeah, it's not going to start this weekend. It's not going to start the weekend after that either. Against San Francisco, right? If this run game, gets to decent, they're probably going to need some time. But that's I think the difference between having a guy like Nick, right? Nick Chubb, you feel like you can run the ball versus anybody. I don't care if Roquan Smith's out there. I don't care if it's the 49ers, right? You feel like Nick can have a good game against anybody. Where if you're throwing Kareem, Jerome Ford, and the committee out there, it's okay, we probably aren't going to be able to count on this run game, which is what it is. I mean, that's where most of the league's at, unfortunately. So let's talk about Deshaun. I think he had a much better performance this week. clearly from his Monday night game, and probably like the performance that we've been kind of like wanting to see for a while. I think a lot of the anger after that Monday Night Football game, specifically directed towards him, I felt like was like people have been waiting forever, like since what, March of 22, to get one of those good Deshaun Watson games, and it keeps on getting pushed back and pushed back, and it's, oh, it can't be here, and it's this and that. And then you get to Monday night, you feel like the weather's good, you feel like it's finally when you're going to see it, and then you just get a complete stinker of a game from him. And now you know, people are resetting expectations, talking about it might take a whole nother year, and it's like, that's just, it can't be like that. We can't wait this long. You're like, he'll be 30 by the time he plays a good football game. But him finally having that game, I think does wonders for, I think, the fan base. Do you think it does as much for him and his like comfort in his offense as it does for just people in general who are concerned about this, myself included?
I think that the Jerome Ford touchdown was a big weight lift. I thought you could almost feel it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can actually, we can create some big plays here. It can happen for us. They're watching the defense just like go bananas for 3 games, having the most fun in the world, and they feel like they're fighting for every single yard they find. So there's some of that, man. There really is some difficulty that stems from that, and I think in that same drive that they found him, by him I mean Ford, there on that double move, they had a couple plays before that, Watson was, in that rollout off that a little RPO wrinkle they were introducing, and threw the ball backward, right? And it was like, it's a viral thing. Like, your quarterback throws it backward and misses him, and you could just sort of feel that there was this gigantic weight on top of them. Like, we cannot figure this out. So that part of it was, you could tell, very frustrating for them. And the second down and 26 after that fumble to Moore, the backward pass, they take a shot on a great route from Amari Cooper, and I really think you have to put a lot of the praise into Cooper's lap, because he loosened up everything, right? It was such an elite football game from him. And after that deep ball, that pass interference is called, they get that big play touchdown. Then from there, it just kind of felt like everything started clicking. The ball was out, it was accurate, it was where it's supposed to be. They had a good feel for what the Titans were going to do. So I think that there should be an expectation that this offense is going to keep getting better, and you could see it from Kevin and Deshaun, that deep ball to Coop, where it's like, all right, man, like, we can, that deep touchdown, they're chest bumping and jumping, and like, these guys are trying to feel like, okay, we are on the cusp of something. Let's hit some of these and get rolling. And for them to do that and find those, I think it was really revealing the amount of like exhale that happened between all of them in that late second quarter into the second half. And it was encouraging to watch them convert some of those third downs, take some of those covered throws, and put the football and give your guys a chance to catch it. And, I've said multiple times that it has felt like Watson is trying to regain his NFL image from one throw, right? He feels like he has to get it all back. And as he gets, he's 28, he's not getting any younger. I think we could all agree, when we watch some of those early Deshaun Texans clips, he was moving a little faster than he is right now. He needs to age gracefully here. And what I mean by that is, stop taking so many dang hits. He's taken a lot of hits, even on throwaways, Quincy. He's taking a lot of hits. He didn't throw at practice today. And I don't think you're going to see a lot of people who are like, that's normal. It's not normal. If your quarterback's not throwing, it's because he's a little sore and they don't want to put any wear and tear on the body that's already there. He's taking some serious shots. So he needs to understand, live to fight another play. It's okay to take an incomplete pass on second down. You don't have to create something out of nothing all the time. And I know that's his MO. I'm fully aware that that's what's made him, but he has to understand he's not going to always be able to get out of chaos the way he used to. So he has to just understand, again, like, the way you get yourself back into the elite pantheon of quarterbacks is you just make the right decision every damn time. Make the right decision, and it'll build itself up. Your efficiency numbers will come, and again, it's a build-up process. It's almost like you're restarting as a rookie, man, because you miss so much time, and you can't go out there trying to reset the world on fire in 1 week and in one throw. So I hope that there's a little bit of that's lifted from him now, hitting some of those, and you can start to see Deshaun play a little bit more settled. And I really was, and it's not phony here, I was encouraged by the late second into third, fourth, where it's like, okay, ball's out, hitch, throw. Things are just looking a timing angle a little bit better than we've seen them look at times.
Yeah, and these athletes are human, and he hadn't had a good game in like 3 years. Like it's been forever. There's no way he's not thinking about that. Every time he goes out and plays a football game, every week he's preparing for a football game. It's been 3 years since I've been good. It's been 3 years since I've been in that conversation. And by that time, he's been sitting out. He's seen Lamar win an MVP. Well, it happened before he was out, but he's seen Pat Mahomes rise to Hall of Fame levels. He's seen Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow rise to levels that were above where he was, even when he was in the league last. Like, he's seen these things happen. He comes back and he has 8 bad, well, not, some of them were, but some of them were some of them were bad, right? But 8 under expectation games in a row. And he's got to be wondering, like, am I still that guy? Like, at some point, it's got to affect you. And it seemed like that Pittsburgh game. And then honestly, it seemed like after he made that mistake to Elijah Moore, it for whatever reason, it seemed to calm him down because he came back out there and then he got the pass interference on Coop, which I thought that was a good ball he threw there too, to make sure you draw that. And I was like, okay, it seemed like something happened there to relax him a little bit. Like maybe sometimes you do something so dumb that you go, all right, let me slow down. I'm clearly messing up. Yeah. And maybe that was it for him. That'd be a hell of a thing if that's where like the turning point in the season happens for him. But yeah, it's been a weird thing with him. And he is going to have to adjust his game, right? I think in his head, right? That's why you come and play with a Kevin Stefanski, because you feel like that can help your game age gracefully, because he plays a kind of pocket dominated kind of style of quarterback, or that's what he wants. So you don't come here because you want to do the old Deshaun. You got to come here because you want to take some of the stuff that the offense is giving you. And you ever hear Tom Brady talk about the game, he's always like, it's about patience, right? It's not fun to do some of this stuff. It's not fun to take what's there and just stay ahead of the sticks and wait for this. But it's hunting. You gotta wait for them to mess up, especially if they think you're good. They're not going to give you those opportunities. They're going to respect you. So that's the game he's got to play. He's got to be patient. I think this is going to be a great week to see if that patience stuck, because he's going to be pressured, right? He's going to get pressure this game. He's going to be, in situations where he could do what he did on Monday and escape a lot and flood early, or he could stay in there, make a throw, and just try to get that ball out quick. I think this is going to be an interesting game. If he plays well in this one, I feel so much better about the rest of the season, because it tells me, okay, there's a big change that happened, and where Monday's probably something we're not going to see again for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be like some metamorphosis happens with him that's just obvious to everybody. You can just start to feel it, right? Right now the thing that is giving him some issues is throwing against pressure, and he, I think, again, has to just slow himself down as best he can and try to understand that it's 2nd and 10 is not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. You can. It's not the last play of the game. Downs, for sure. He is part of what's made Deshaun so fun in the NFL is that he's never done that, right? He's always been a guy that fights for every inch on the football field and has created something out of nothing. But as you get older and less athletic than you've been, and I'm not saying he's not athletic right now. He clearly still can do some things. I mean, we're witnessing it. But he has to understand the wear and tear on the body, taking the hits. He's got to slide more. He's just got to understand the nuance of like, this down is okay to eat because we can come back and we have a good 3rd and 8 play in our back pocket here. Like there's just some of that thinking through the game plan thing that has to happen for him. And when you get the perfect conflux of events, right, where he's trying to win back the respect of everybody, and he's trying to do that on top of trying to get an offense going that has started slow, and then an offense that is, Nick Chubb, my A1 is now out, right? My lean on guy is now out. It's all on me. I think some of that stuff can slow down over time is my point, Quincy. And the more exposure he gets, the more he keeps playing, getting live reps. I don't think we should have any other expectation right now than for him to be the level of quarterback we just saw in that game this past weekend, and one that can be even even better at times, right? That should be an expectation for him as well. So he's going to have some games where the defenses get the best of him, but there's certainly it's eating at him. The Pittsburgh game is eating at him. He can't be that guy. He's got to be an average, above average quarterback who can string together some really good performances when everything comes together, the game plan and the defensive style, structure, all of that. So not to say the pressure's on, but we know that. We all knew that the pressure would be on him. And like you said, if he strings together another good one against Baltimore, who just is traditionally stingy, then you start to feel pretty good, because he played Baltimore pretty well in that Monday night home game last year, where he he just took what they were giving him. You need to see him doing that and taking care and using those extension plays where he does get out away from chaos to create first downs. That first drive one where he broke 2 tackles and got the ball out to Elijah is great. If you get out there on bootlegs and nothing's there because they painted up the coverage, just throw it away, man. Do not stop taking hits you don't need to take, because they are going to run him from time to time and he's going to get hits, but don't feed into hits that you don't need to naturally have to have happen,
Yeah, especially outside the pocket. You just don't. Yep. Those are the most gnarly ones you can take there when you're going right or something on a boot. But yeah, I think also in retrospect too, look, I don't know of any quarterback who's had a good day after they gave up a touchdown on the first play from scrimmage, whether that be a pick six or a fumble in your head. That's kind of a day ruiner right there, right? I think we've seen it happen to Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. We saw that happen to Ben in our favor against the Steelers in the playoff, and it's like it's hard to recover from that and narrow things down and calm down, especially when it's your first big national TV game in like 3 years. So maybe that's a little bit too of what got to him. It's like he probably felt embarrassed, like just from the onset, right? Like,
yeah. And the further we get away from that game, and the more you hear them talk about Nick, the way they lost him, and the way that knee happened, and the way the crowd screamed "oh" when they saw the replay, that took a lot out of everybody, man. It really took a lot out of everybody, and I'm pretty convinced that the further we get away from that Pittsburgh game, I'm going to be wadding that up in the trash and throwing it away, because that I think that moment there, along with the freaky way that first interception happened, it just screams to me that was a wild variance outcome, man. They win that game 9.5 out of 10 times they win that game. So I don't really hold that game. I'm not making excuses for Deshaun. He was bad in that game, but I just think that he wasn't the only one who was struggling. And I do think it was a really, really wild mixture of events in that one. And the way the team kind of felt, you could feel after like what happened with Nick, that was so gruesome. And the guys on the sideline watched the replay injury the same way the crowd did when they yelled. So I just think it takes your tunnel focus away. You know what I mean? So I don't place the giant world of stock into like, oh, week 2 is more who he is than, some of the positive we saw in week 1 and then what we were able to get there in week 3.
Yeah, man, there's just something there over in that Three Rivers area. There's just something anti-Browns there. It's just uncanny. Yeah, I'm glad we got it out the way. Like, if anything, we don't have to go back there. Hopefully, they're probably not going to be a home playoff team. So, like, you're done. You don't have to do that again, because there's nothing good ever happens there for the Cleveland Browns in the regular season, at the very least. Maybe in the postseason with no fans and during a COVID year, but not in the regular season.
It's a house of horrors, man. They it's not like they just beat up the Browns. Like, they're like 21-0 on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, it was a perfect combination. Like, if they would have wore the color rush, it would have beat us by 40, right? Like, it was a perfect confluence of all of their like stuff, and it was like we were fighting something other than football in that game. It just felt weird. But Jake, thank you for coming on. Always a joy to have you on. Make sure you follow Jake and the OBR Film Breakdown on YouTube, Twitch. You guys are still on Twitch, Spotify, and anywhere where podcasts can be found. Jake also has a 2-hour film breakdown on that YouTube channel. I'll try to link it down below. It's pretty spectacular, about an hour on both sides of the ball. I know a lot of you guys love to get super in-depth. Well, nobody does it better than Jake. So make sure you check it out there if you want even more coverage. Jake's one of the best out there. Jake, thank you for being on. Thank you for talking Browns. You have a great day. Everybody else have a good night.